Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I'm the Director of Knowledge Creation and Research at the Kauffman Foundation. I don't have fire, but I promise I'm not going to put data and charts and numbers and R squares up. At the Kauffman Foundation, and I know that you've seen people from the foundation here before, we do entrepreneurship and education. I'm going to talk specifically about research and data and what we hope to do for you and with you in the future. And the first thing is we have a collective approach that's called Zero Barriers to Startup. And what that basically means is it shouldn't matter if you're rich or poor. It shouldn't matter if you grew up in a poor neighborhood or a rich neighborhood. It shouldn't matter if your parents had incredibly well-paying jobs and STEM education or they didn't. It shouldn't matter if you took the bus to school or you had to walk to school. It shouldn't matter where you're from. The color of your skin shouldn't matter. Your religion shouldn't matter. But if you have a good idea, you should be able to start a company, commercialize that idea, and then create all the value that comes out of that idea that we all benefit from. And so our Zero Barriers to Startup movement is really close to our hearts. And I'd like to tell you a story about what serves as my inspiration. And so a man served in the Navy. He came back to his family. He got a job. He did very well for the company. He created a lot of revenues. And he had some problems with his boss, which can happen. He left the company and he went on to start a company of his own in the basement of his home with about $5,000 in capital from friends, family, his own personal networks. By 1989, that company was a billion-dollar enterprise and had more than 3,000 associates. And that man is Mr. Kauffman, and that's why the foundation exists, and that's why I'm here today. What if we could make it so that anybody who had an idea could do that, could start a company? In 1950, can you imagine someone starting a company in the basement of their home and it becoming one of the most successful companies? That's where research comes in. So in order to serve you, we have to know what your problems are. Let me ask, how many people work or have founded incubators or funds or some kind of intervention that offers or serves entrepreneurs? If you raise your hand. Okay, there are a lot of people. How many of you know with certainty and have evidence to show why you know that what you are doing is exactly the reasons for the outcome that you have? How many of you have hard evidence where you can say, this leads to this, and this is why? I see one, two. Can you raise them higher? Okay, I see a handful of people. And how many people have ever read an academic journal article? Okay. How many people understood, and not only understood, but pulled out direct actionable information from the article and took them back to their programs? I hear people laughing, that's not a good sign. And took them back to their programs and were able to create really useful program design based on what they found. I see, okay, a handful of hands. Okay. What if everyone that read the article, right, were raising their hands for the second question? Because I saw a drop of close to 66, about 2/3 of the people that have read the article were not able to use information. Now, what if you could design a program with better information or more information, or information where you could say, these are the 5 or the 6 things that I could do or that I'm considering doing, which ones are the most promising, right? So one of the things that we face as a community, not just at the foundation, but as a community, is that the research and the work, the practice, the things that everybody is doing have to come together a bit more, particularly now that we know what our problems are. So we've spent 20 years, 30 years understanding what the problem is, and we know that entrepreneurs drive job creation. We know that there are significant barriers all around the country, and these barriers can be geographic, they can be based on race and ethnicity, they can be based on industry, and so we know what our problems are more and more, and they're more obvious, right? And so the challenge for us moving ahead and moving into the next 10, 15, 30 years, using new data, using new technology, is to really figure out how we can create menus, right? Where we can go and we can say, hey, I'm starting an incubator and I'm starting it over here, and these are the people that I think I want to help. What are my options, right? And so in order to do that, we have a couple of tools, a couple of approaches. One of our approaches is we want to make information available, right? We make information available and we want to share. And can you imagine a world where everybody was collecting data, a lot of people are, and the data was talking to each other, and the research was talking to the practice, and that affected how we create data, how we collect data, and the analytics on the data would actually come out, right, and basically give you your menu. They would give you your options, and they would save a lot of money. So the incubator that starts with a fairly small amount of capital, that doesn't have access to $80,000, $90,000 to hire a full-time researcher to actually do the analysis, right, could come to look at this big collection of data, a lot of which is standardized, do some analysis, and then figure out what to do, right? What if we had that kind of world? What if we had a world where everybody that was achieving success in ecosystems was coming together and bringing their success so that we could start to think about what works, right? So one of the things the foundation has done is it's created the playbook. And the playbook is our attempt at collecting successes and collecting stories and putting them all together so that key players in the ecosystem can learn from each other. We're also working on peer learning and creating opportunities for information sharing across what we know works or what we can find out works and the people that use the information. So I'm going to borrow a little bit from something in the morning, and I would just throw out the request that if you're a funder, if you're a researcher, or if you're someone that actually has designed a program or is in the process of designing a program, please consider the importance of research and data. We really want to know, and here's the example. I met somebody a few weeks ago who said, I'm thinking about starting a program for women entrepreneurs in my city. And the city was a medium-sized city in the north middle of the country. And the person said, what should I do? And I said, well, I think it's a great idea. You should let me know what your questions are. And so he said, well, how do I pick the women? How do I screen the women? How do I know that the people that are participating in the screening process have the right background? How do I determine eligibility? How do I figure out what success is? And all of those questions are questions that go into the program design for this program. And so that's what research is for. So please consider that when you design your programs. Please consider embedding research into your programs. If you're a funder, please consider the importance of research. And if you're a researcher, please ask entrepreneurs and please ask the people setting up the incubators and working in the ecosystem and funding the entrepreneurs what their problems are, so that we know what to work on. These are all things we talk about a lot at the foundation. And so I'll directly answer also the question of motivation, and I'll end with another story, and that is, I was in Houston in, I believe, early October last year, and, or I was in a little town outside Houston in early October last year, and talking to a woman who owned a store. And she was working from 5 a.m. to 11:30 at night, operating a distribution center out of her store. And I remember asking her, and this is where ecosystems really, really become important. I remember asking her, why are you doing this? Don't you have to get your business up and running? She said, yes, I do. She said, but it's us. It's the entrepreneurs. It's the business owners in the community. If we don't take care of each other, and if we don't take care of our communities, who else will? So I want to leave you with that, and I want us to do our best for her and for the entrepreneurs that we all serve. Thank you.